This is good. Oh, sorry. I'm just reading Lady Came Knocking by Brian Bond. And I'll tell you what, I like this book so much, I want to share it with you. So we'll start with the first chapter and see where we can go from there. This is about the main detective is Steve Flats Magull, retired, and he is just a wonderful, wonderful character, and the whole book is just a lot of fun to read. So let's enjoy it together. There we go. Andrea trudged down the lane, unsure of exactly where she was. The heavens had opened shortly after she was forced to abandon her car. She wasn't dressed for this type of weather as she clasped her jacket tightly under her chin. The rain was lashing down and the howling wind was making the drops sting as they hit her face. In the distance, Andrea could make out a light. Her pace quickened as she headed towards it. As she got closer, she could see the light was coming from a cottage set back from the lane. By the time she reached the front door, her clothes were wringing wet and clinging uncomfortably to her body. With trepidation, she knocked on the door, and immediately a dog could be heard barking furiously from within the cottage. Andrea considered walking away because she had a latent fear of dogs, but she was now shivering so badly with cold that she decided against it. The fatigue forced her to lean on the cottage wall. A moment later, she heard a man's voice call to the dog, and to her relief, it stopped barking. When the door opened, a man appeared and looked surprised to see her. There was a brief pause while he checked if she was alone before he ushered her inside. Come in, he invited. Andrea was in no condition to argue and stepped inside. The water dripped off her clothes, making a puddle on the floor. I'm sorry, she said through chattering teeth. Never mind, let me get you a towel. She could hear his footsteps as he ran upstairs whilst his dog sat watching her, which made her feel a little uneasy. When he returned, he handed her a towel and was holding a bathrobe. You really ought to get out of those wet clothes, he said, and offered her the bathrobe. It's my spare, and although it's going to be a bit big, at least it's clean and dry. There's a bathroom through there if you'd like to change. Andrea paused for a moment as she realized that the man appeared to live alone, and as such, she felt a little vulnerable. She looked at the man before her. He was of average height, a little overweight, with dark brown eyes and a kindly smile. Her intuition told her that she could trust him, so she took the robe, thanked him, and headed for the bathroom. When she emerged, he smiled reassuringly. We forgot the introductions. I'm Steve, and this is Jeeves. The dog gave a playful bark. I'm Andrea Latham. Andy to my friends. My car appears to have 2 flat tires, so I had to leave it. Do you have a telephone? She asked. Well, there's one in the hallway, but I think you'd be lucky to get them fixed tonight, he replied. Now let me take your wet clothes and dry them by the fire. You're in luck. I made some vegetable soup earlier. Would you like some? She nodded. That would be lovely, if it's not too much trouble. And they went to make a call. Andrew was only gone a few seconds before she returned, looking very sad. I just realized I don't know who to call, what I should do. And she began to cry. Well, just now, your health is more important than your car, so let's deal with one thing at a time. Jeeves went up to her and nudged her hand. Suddenly, her fear of dogs disappeared. She knelt down and stroked him. What type dog is he? She asked. A crazy one, replied Steve with a smile. He's a Welsh collie, highly intelligent, but as daft as a bag of spanners. He's named after the character from P.J. Woodhouse's book, a favorite of mine. He pointed to a table. Your soup is ready. Help yourself to some bread if you wish. Her rumbling stomach reminded her that she hadn't eaten for a while, so she sat down and took a spoon in hand. Now then, young lady, what brings you here on a night like this? Andrea looked at him through tearful eyes. I think I've killed my boyfriend, she sobbed. Her reply took Steve by surprise. He looked at the petite 20-something young lady with her pretty blue eyes and soaking wet fair hair. And what makes you think that? He asked. She stopped eating and put down the spoon. My boyfriend had become increasingly more violent in the few months we've been together. Earlier today, he got angry because I burnt his toast and he hit me. She swept the hair from one side of her face to reveal a sizable bruise. I was knocked to the floor and then he kicked me in the ribs. As I got up, I grabbed an ornament and hit out with it, catching him on the side of his head. He fell and I saw blood on the carpet. I panicked, quickly packed some things into a bag and left. I've been driving for a few hours and somehow got lost. I'm not really sure how I got here. And then my car got a couple of punctures. The rest you know. Steve nodded. His instincts told him that there was more to this story, and he couldn't believe that she was a killer. You're in no fit state to go anywhere tonight, so why don't you stay here and we'll sort things out in the morning. Finish your soup while I sort out the room for you. Andrea briefly wanted to protest, but found herself too wary and short of options. This time, when he left the room, Jeeves followed his master. When Steve returned, Andy was stood in the kitchen, at the kitchen sink washing her dish and a few bits of dirty crockery. Now, you don't have to do that, he told her. It's the least I could do to repay your kindness. He asked for her car keys. Jeeves needs his evening walk, so I thought I'd fetch your bags at the same time, if you like. Andrew reached for her sodden handbag and handed him a bunch of keys. Are you sure you don't mind? It's a terrible night. You make yourself at home. We'll be back shortly. Now, which way is your car? As soon as Steve left, Andy looked around the cottage. This place needs tidying up, she thought, and set about it. About 4 minutes later, Steve returned with his dog and carrying a holdall. Both of them were very wet. He looked around his home and nodded with approval. You didn't need to do that, but thank you. Well, it's the least I can do to repay your hospitality. She took her bag and asked where she would be sleeping. I'd like to put some dry clothes on. Steve led her up the stairs and opened the first door on the left. This will be your room. The far door you see is mine, and the other door is the main bathroom. There's a clean towel on the bed, so you can get cleaned up if you wish. Once again, she thanked him for his kindness, and he went downstairs. When Andrea finally came down from her room, she was still wearing the bathrobe, but had a top on underneath. Steve looked at her and could now clearly see the bruise on her face. He made her a cup of tea and pointed out where everything was. If you need anything, please help yourself. Now, if you excuse me, I'm turning in for the night. Oh, word of warning. Unless you want company of the four-legged variety, I suggest you close your bedroom door. He raised his eyebrows and glanced accordingly at Jeeves. Andrea curled up in a comfortable chair by the fading fire and pondered the day's events as she finished her tea. For the first time in months, she felt relaxed and safe. Her thoughts then turned to her host, and although the years had been kind to him, she sighed he must have been very handsome in his youth. Eventually, she yawned and decided that it was time for her to go to bed. I'm just checking something. I tell you what, that was kind of short. Let's say we read chapter 2 as well. Okay. In the middle of the night, a terrifying scream rang out, waking Steve and causing his dog to bark. He could hear loud wailing coming from the spare room and hurried to check it out. Andrea was sat up in bed and crying uncontrollably and uttering through her tears, "Sorry, I had a nightmare." Steve perched tenderly on the edge of the bed. "Would you like to talk about it?" Jeeves seized the opportunity to jump onto the bed, and the distraction was enough to stop her crying. "All I can see is Martin, that's my boyfriend, lying on the floor and so much blood everywhere. What if he's dead and I killed him? What will happen to me?" "You don't know that for sure. Tell me, where do you live?" "We have a rented place in Walker's Drive, Derby number 16A. Steve tried to comfort her. "Maybe some warm milk will help you relax." She nodded. "That would be nice." Down in the kitchen, she asked why he was being so kind to her. "I'm a complete stranger to you, and yet you give me a bed for the night." He smiled. We all need a helping hand at times, and besides, I couldn't leave you outside in this weather. The nearest house to mine is the farm half a mile farther on." They sat chatting for a while until Andrea yawned and said that she would return to her bed. "I'll allow Jeeves to stay with you, if you like. He'll ease your mind." The dog did not need telling twice and followed the woman up to her room. Andrea was woken by the sound of a cock crowing and drawn by the aroma of fried bacon coming from the kitchen. She put on the bathrobe and after washing her face went downstairs. "Good morning, Andy. Hope you managed to get some sleep." "Yes, thank you. Jeeves was like a teddy bear and snuggled up to me." "Would you like tea or coffee and something to eat?" She nodded. "That'd be nice. Tea, please, and perhaps a bacon sandwich?" She replied coyly. Can you tell me where I am?" "You are in the village of Pitton, not far from the town of Yeovil." Steve handed her a plate with her sandwich. "When you finish and got dressed, we can go in and take a look at your car. In the meantime, Jeeves needs his morning walk." As she ate, Andy glanced around the cottage. It was a charming old building with oak beams and loads of character. Not your typical bachelor pad, she thought. As she was getting dressed, Andrea heard a door slam, followed by the patter of feet racing up the stairs. The door flew open, and with one good leap, Jeeves had landed on the bed. She sat and stroked the dog. All her fear of canines seemed to just ebb away. Once she was ready, she went downstairs with Jeeves close behind her. "It looks as though you've made a new friend," said Steve. "I've looked at your tires, and you'll need to get someone to come and change them. We can drive into town and see a friend of mine who runs a garage." As they left the cottage, Andrea looked at the old building. "It's a large house for just one person," she commented. "That's just how we like it. Plenty of space inside and out." He unlocked the car door, and Jeeves hopped in and sat in the middle. Steve reached across and opened the door for Andrea to get in. The car had a bench seat in the front, and the dog had already made itself comfortable. He loves car journeys. If I left him at home, he would go crazy. He hates being on his own. When they got to town, Steve said that he wanted to stop at the local police station. "I have contacts there, and they can make inquiries about your boyfriend and his welfare." Inside the police station, he asked the desk constable if the inspector was in. "Tell him an old friend wants to speak to him." The constable left the desk and walked to the back of the station. A few minutes later, he returned. "The inspector will be with you shortly," he announced. "Take a seat." They watched as a woman entered and asked if anyone had handed in a handbag. "Sorry, madam, there's nothing in the lost property as yet." Suddenly, a loud voice called out, "Well, well, well, if it isn't Flats Magull himself." Andrew looked around to see if someone else had come in before realizing the inspector was referring to Steve. "Here you are, Constable, a legend of the force before he retired. This is Flats Magull, in person, and that is his trusted companion, Jeeves. What brings you here?" "Could I have a word in private?" The inspector opened the door. "Come on through." They followed the inspector through the station to his office. He turned to Andrea. "How do you know this reprobate?" Before she could answer, Flats did the introductions. "Andrea, this is Inspector Larry Bottle, or Tops to us. I didn't tell you that I used to be in the force some years ago." "Now then, Flats, what's all this about?" "Well, actually, I need a favor." He then explained how Andrea came to his cottage and what she had told him. Tops listened and made a few notes. Sounds like he got what he deserved. Leave with me and I'll see what I can find out. In the meantime, will the young lady be remaining with you?" Flats looked at Andrea, who nodded in agreement. "Yep, she will," he replied. The two men shook hands before Flats and Andrea left the office. It was only a short drive to the garage. "Morning, Reg. How's tricks?" "Hey, Flats, nice to see you again. What brings you here? Don't tell me you want to double the value of that motor of yours by buying a couple of tires." Flats turned to Andrea. This guy thinks he's a comedian. She smiled but said nothing. Flats then informed Reg of Andrea's plight and handed him a piece of paper. "That's the size of the tires." Reg looked at the paper. "Give me a moment." They watched as he checked the racks of tires. "Your luck, I got them. I'll run over this afternoon and change them. Andrea thanked him and got back into Flats' car. On the way, Flats spotted his local milkman and flagged him down. "Hey, have you got a spare pint?" he asked. The man got out of his milk float and took a pint from the one crate. "I'll add it to your bills. See you Saturday, if not before." "Thanks, Jazz," said Flats. Back at the cottage, Andy offered to put the kettle on and make some tea. "Okay, whilst you do that, I must attend to hens." "Can I come with you? I've never seen real hens up close." Once outside, Andy took one look at the garden. "It's huge." She could see hen houses to one side and follow Flats as he crossed the garden. Jeeves got there first and was sat waiting for them. There were 3 hens. That one's Tika, that one's Kiev, and finally Wings. "You give them names?" Flats didn't answer as he opened the door and let the hens out into the garden. "They're great for getting rid of slugs," he informed her as he checked the neat nest boxes and retrieved 3 eggs. He handed them to Andy, who carefully accepted them. "Oh, they're still warm." Back inside the cottage, they were sat down and enjoying the cup of tea which Andrea had made, when there was a knock on the door. Flats opened the door to be confronted by the burly figure of Inspector Bottle and 2 police officers. He could tell from the look on their faces that it wasn't good news. "Come in, chaps. Miss Andrea Langham, I'm arresting you on suspicion of the murder of Mr. Martin Connolly." Her face dropped as one policeman stepped forward, brandishing a pair of handcuffs, whilst the inspector informed her of her rights. "Are they really necessary?" protested Flats. The inspector held up a hand and gestured to the policeman. "And can I have a minute with her before you take her away?" Inspector Button nodded. "We'll step outside, but only for a minute and out of respect for our friendship." By now, Andrea was shaking and crying. Flats clasped her face in his hands and looked into her eyes. "Listen to me. When you get to the station, insist on allowing me to represent you. Do you understand?" She nodded feebly, gave Jeeves a friendly pat, and taking her coat and bag, went outside on the waiting policeman. So that's about as far. I'm going to leave you kind of hanging there, so that way next time we do a reading, you're going to come back, because there's a lot more to come, and a lady came waiting. So I look forward to seeing you again on the next reading we do. The next one, probably tomorrow or Sunday, is going to be, we're going to do, I know what we're going to do. In one of the Time Is series, Frank, who ran the diner, and Don, whenever they go out on a trip, a time travel or otherwise, the big thing is to eat. So if you remember from the end of the last reading I did from the Time Is series, Don and Frank had decided that they were going to go on the biggest food trough feeding they could do. So you might as well hear what they went on, where, and how it went. So I look forward to seeing you on the next reading. And from me here in the Reader's Corner, thank you again. Again, this is available on Amazon, and I'll put a link on my website, as well as locations of where you can pick this up, because you're going to want to after you hear a little bit more, if you haven't already. This is a fun book, and it's really going to be something you're going to want to have. So thank you again. I appreciate you visiting, and we will see you again on the next reading. So have a good day.